H.P. Lovecraft may not have been the best person, but his impact on the horror genre is inarguable. His most well-known contribution being Cthulhu and the other Eldritch gods and Eldritch beings. Eldritch means strange, unnatural, or uncanny. These are ancient beings that may be from outer space, or even from a different realm altogether. D&D doesn't do a great job with Eldritch beings in my opinion. Mind flayers, beholders, outer brains, and aboleths are what I would consider the main Eldritch beings of D&D. These monsters are referred to as aberrations, and are often from the outer planes, such as the Far Realm, a place of chaos, home to Eldritch gods that the main pantheons often fear for their vast amount of power. My biggest issue is that a lot of these aberrations just feel like aliens. They aren't confusing. They aren't driven mad by their environment. They don't fit a lot of the Lovecraft mythos. If you're going for a Lovecraftian feeling, you could morph these creatures a bit. Maybe you use a Mind Flayer stat block for a normal looking person. This guy, let's call him Jeff, seems innocent. When fighting, tentacles crawl out of his mouth. You can have a seafaring session where the party is attacked by a monster in the sea that they assume to be a sea serpent, until they are charmed by an aboleth. Maybe the villagers are acting weird and moving through life like zombies, but later to be revealed that there's an outer brain living in the sewers. Maybe a friendly NPC is revealed to be the mound of flesh, organs, and appendages that make up a star-spawn emissary. Maybe the town is full of nice citizens that are secretly part of a cult that is worshipping a being in the church and forcing people to convert to their religion. By being in the church, I mean an Eldritch being in the church. I don't mean this is just a bunch of religious people. This is somebody trying to convince the players to worship their Eldritch god. Or not even a god. This is probably just a being similar to the Mind Flayer or a beholder. A beholder would make a lot of sense here. An important thing here is that the players should be on their toes during the session. There should be an air of mystery about what is going on. The enemy shouldn't be too obvious. The players should be concerned about whether or not they can defeat the threat. Eldritch beings should be powerful. Now, that's not always the case, stat block wise, but they should be powerful. And they should be confusing anyway, in my opinion, just like the Jeff secretly being a Mind Flayer. I don't think it has the same effect if the players just happen upon a Mind Flayer, or they just happen upon a beholder. My favorite way to run beholders is for the players to be going through a dungeon for treasure. They don't have an ulterior motive. Maybe they think a specific quest item that they're looking for in the campaign is in this cave. Maybe they think somebody got lost in the cave or somebody got kidnapped and brought to the cave. The way I've done it in the past is I've had a bartender just mention in conversation, hey, there's been scouting parties that have disappeared en route to this nearby village. We're not sure why they're disappearing. And then the party found a cave where they saw a man in armor bringing in discarded weapons and stuff from outside of the cave. Now, if the party looked closer, there was blood and stuff on the ground. The discarded weapons were probably from a scouting party. Sadly, something else did come up in the session that kind of drew their attention away a bit, but if they looked closer, there was blood on the ground. There's something that came up in the party, I think was the deck of many things, but we don't need to talk about that today. And then if they were to go into the cave, that armored man was an animated armor. There was nobody inside of the armor. The cave was full of animated armor, but it was also full of treasure. To the players, this looked like a treasure trove that was set up by maybe a mad wizard. Somebody that animated a lot of armor to protect themselves. And that's what they expected as they went deeper into the cave. They expected that all of this treasure would lead to a powerful spellcaster guarding a hoard. And then they get a little bit deeper into the cave, and they fought a weaker version of the Mind Flayer, the Spectator. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3, you should know what a Spectator is. I mean, I guess if you did that part of the game. But they fought a Spectator. And I'm going to be honest, they beat the Spectator in one round. I was honestly kind of flabbergasted. I think one of the players had Disintegrate by that point. Somebody hit the Spectator. The player with Disintegrate went next. They destroyed the Spectator. It was insane. But then they went deeper into the cave. And there was a mound of treasure. Gold, crowns, weapons. In the middle of this room. And atop the mound was a beholder. And the players were confused as to why a Spectator and beholder were together, but the Spectator was working for the beholder, which I don't know if it is lore accurate, but the Spectator was working for the beholder as like a god. So they had to fight a beholder. But the entire time they thought they were in the cave of a mage. And I think that misdirection can be important to Eldritch horror. Something I have often wanted to try with Eldritch Beings is a one-shot inspired by Slay the Princess. Let me explain Slay the Princess first. In Slay the Princess, the player is tasked with killing a princess that is currently locked in the basement of a cabin. If the player fails, the princess will destroy the world. Or that's at least what you're told by the voice of a narrator. Each failure leads to you being reborn and things being slightly changed. The story being slightly changed. The princess being slightly changed. New voices join the narrator, with each ending unlocked. You and the princess learn more about each other. You and the princess learn more about this world that you're locked into together. Maybe the session is about the players being killed over and over again until they can figure out how to defeat this confusing creature. It's just a time loop. Stuck with different choices, different environments, ever slightly every time the players come back. Maybe the door was made out of wood the first time and it's made out of stone or metal the second. Maybe the princess was blonde initially and now she's a brunette. Maybe she now has tentacles. But there's slight differences every time the players come back. Maybe the players have to defeat iterations of a monster until they unlock the secret of the being controlling the simulation. So the players are tasked with defeating maybe a normal person. And then they kill this person and their day starts over. And they're tasked with killing a normal person. But he's a little abnormal now. And then this keeps happening until they can figure out that a different entity is controlling this scenario. Each time they go back into, let's say, the cabin, like it was in Slay the Princess, each time they go back into the cabin, the players get new clues about what's going on. This would work great with Eldritch horror. It would also work great with the Fae, since they love to play tricks on people. But I think the creature they're fighting should get a little bit harder each time. And the creature controlling the simulation maybe shouldn't be an NPC they fight. Maybe it's an Eldritch god that is just toying with them for a bit. And as soon as they crack the code, the Eldritch god gets bored. The gods shouldn't honestly make sense. Which brings us into the next part of using Eldritch Beings in your D&D campaign. The Great Old One Warlock. So the Great Old Ones are the Eldritch gods of D&D. And another common way that Eldritch gods are used is as a Warlock patron. This could be Cthulhu. It could be a different god from Lovecraftian mythos. It could be an ancient primordial being that predates the gods of whatever setting you're running in. It should be mysterious. The players may not know the intentions of this creature. They might speak to the player in gibberish only they can understand. Maybe the player has nightmares of their patron consuming planets. The deities that the party cleric follow might be uneasy when discussing the warlock patron. Celestials that you meet might be uneasy about the warlock. Different clerics might be uneasy about the warlock. The patron might not acknowledge the warlock. They might not care who they're giving their power to. Maybe their goals involve having disciples, and they understand that they have power to spare. Maybe they are just bored and wanting to influence the material plane. Maybe their patron hasn't physically been to the material plane ever and wants to learn as much as possible about the realm of lesser beings. That's maybe my favorite one. I love the idea of a creature like Cthulhu, who's my favorite Eldritch god, partially because he's the most popular one, I'll be honest. But maybe they just want to learn more about people, and that's their entire intention. I mean, does that go against what a lot of people view Eldritch gods as? Yes. But maybe they're just curious. Maybe you follow an Eldritch god that's a cat, you know? I also like the idea, this is a weird sidebar, of using like Mothman for this. Like the entity Mothman, not a Mothman. Using him as your Eldritch patron would be really fun. I think a lot of cryptids make sense as Eldritch beings. But no matter the reason the patron has given the warlock their powers, the player now holds powerful psychic magic bestowed by an Eldritch god. And that's a big thing in D&D. I mean, are warlocks a little underpowered sometimes? Yeah, they don't have enough spell slots. But, I mean, I have been very intrigued about the Great Old One patron. And I would love to play one of these warlocks in a campaign one day if I ever get to play D&D with a group again. If you want me to do a deep dive into the Great Old One Warlock, let me know. If you want me to do a deep dive into all of the warlocks, let me know. But tell me in the comments how you have used Eldritch Beings in your D&D campaigns. Let me know if you don't agree that D&D doesn't always handle them the best. I think they lean very heavily into them being from space, not very heavily into them being very mysterious creatures. People know a lot about mind flayers and beholders and aboleths and stuff like that. They're very well-known creatures. There should be some Eldritch beings that are just mysterious. I think the flump might be a bit mysterious, and I think technically that's an aberration. I should just do a video about flumps because I do love flumps, but I hope everybody did enjoy this video. Like I said, leave me a comment about how you've used Eldritch Beings in your campaigns. And leave a comment about whether or not you use Eldritch Beings in a one-shot you do for Halloween, or in a campaign that you want to just do a spookier session. Let me know if you used any of this video to influence your stuff. And other than that, guys, I hope everybody is having a spooky October. And until next time, peace.